you found the recipe breakdown for Malibu Monsoon, aka the boring video. If you want to watch the brew day, fermentation, and tasting, go ahead and check out the other video on my channel for this beer, which I'll be sure to link, as well as the recipe I've got here. So, just so you're aware, this video was recorded pre-brew day. Things can very well change, but I did want to at least show you guys how I got to this recipe without weighing down the other video. And honestly, it's mostly because I just really wanted to make a really alcoholic West Coast IPA. Everything I've been making lately has been very not hoppy or very low in alcohol. So I decided I'd make a double IPA again for the first time in a while. Looking around at some other modern West Coast IPAs and combining some of my previous recipes has led me to this one. The one thing I really wanted to try in this brew was some Munich Malt. This is going to be my first time using Munich in a West Coast IPA, and it looks like almost across the board, you're going to see 6 to 12% of Munich in almost any West Coast IPA recipe made these days. In this recipe, I'm going to be using a 6 Lovibond light Munich, but next time I do absolutely want to give out a try to the dark Munich and just see what that difference is. It really seems like people choose that based off their own preference, but it does look like Munich is the way to go to make a good modern IPA. All right, so let's go to percentages. I've got 65% pale ale for my base, along with the 12% light Munich, which is, of course, for flavor. I'm adding in 9% white wheat, as well as 6% flaked oats. Both of these are going to be more for body and head retention, but it should also help add a little bit of complexity to the flavor as well. And before you go off on me, I know oats are not typical for a West Coast IPA, but I personally really like it. And so do a lot of other great IPA makers, such as Burial Co. Their Surf Wax IPA, before they updated their website, used to show that they used flaked oats in that IPA. And that, personally, is the best West Coast IPA I think I've ever had. Granted, I haven't had that many, but I'm getting there. All right, so lastly, we have the 3% of Crystal Tin. This is going to add a touch of color and a little bit of sweetness. Since it's only 3%, I'm not looking to get much from it. It's more just to round it out and make sure that we get at least a little bit of color in there. The other two fermentables I have in here are the honey and cane sugar. The honey is actually from my wife's new coworker. He gave us a huge jar just to be nice, and I'm hoping that I can get a touch of some floral sweetness from it at about 3.5%, because it is some seriously tasty honey. But I really don't want to throw off my style too much. I do want it to stay a West Coast IPA. Then the sugar is really just for some extra ABV. I use a mash and boil as my main brew kettle, and that can only hold 16 pounds of grain. I also have a Home Depot mash tun cooler that I can use. I like my mash and boil, what can I say? So I'm going to add in however much sugar I need at the end of the boil. I'm going to go ahead and take my samples, see what my gravity is, and I'm going to use a calculator I have to reach a starting gravity of around 1080 or so. So we will see how that goes. Then, man, that was long. Is this boring? Do I need to keep doing recipe breakdowns? Are you guys going to watch these? All right, whatever. Let me know in the comments. Hops. I'm only going for 65 IBUs in this beer, and that is really the lower end of West Coast IPAs. I don't have a lot of sweetness going into the grain bill to back it up, so I'm going to stay at 65 IBUs. I personally don't need the beer that is 260 IBUs or something. and it seems like that fad has kind of gone down. Again, my favorite West Coast IPA that I've had is the Surf Wax West Coast IPA from Burial Co. in Asheville, and that one is also listed as 65 IBUs. The thing is, I'm also going to be throwing 12.5 ounces of hops at this beer, so the 65 IBUs is probably not going to be 100% accurate. We're probably going to get a little bit more bitterness than that. All right, so for my boil and hop stand additions, I'm going to be using some of the classic C hops. I've got Centennial, Columbus, and Chinook. These hops are going to provide a nice big dose of American hop dankness. We've got some pine, some citrus characters. Centennial is personally my absolute favorite hop in the world, with Columbus being a very close second. Centennial and Columbus you're going to see in a lot of my recipes. The Chinook is, of course, a classic West Coast IPA hop. It's going to be spicy and piney. It's also going to have a little bit of the American citrus hop flavor. And then I'm also going to be saving a lot of these boil additions in for later in the boil, because I just don't want to boil off the flavor of these hops. But I do still want to get their hot side flavor. These hops taste a lot different when they're boiled, and I want some of that flavor in here with the dry hop, which we're getting to. So the dry hop, I've got Chinook, Citra, and Eldorado. Again, we've got two classic American C hops, but this time the Citra should be more on the fruity, citrusy side of things. And then the Eldorado is another really bright, fruity hop. It's got some, if you ever seen an Eldorado single hop IPA, that's always going to be a good bet. Those are good beers. The flavors that they list for this on the website is stone fruit and pineapple. Stone fruit absolutely works for me. I'm not sure about pineapple, but I think with the hot side hops balancing out the fruity flavors of this dry hop, it's going to come together really good. We're going to get that nice, dank, bitter American hop flavor, as well as some brighter, fruitier notes. Oh, and what's next? The yeast. Well, I don't really have much to say about this yeast. It's my first time using it, but I've used the classic Chico West Coast IPA strain so many times from different manufacturers. WLP 001, the one from Lallemand, the BRY, of course the classic US05. Never, ever had a beer that I liked from US05. So I wanted to give out a try to a different California ale yeast. So I found this one, WLP 051 Cali 5. It is supposed to finish up pretty crisp, but also leave behind some sweetness. The White Labs website says that this yeast is more similar to a British strain than the Chico, and produces esters like cherry and apple. But looking around online and asking some other homebrewers about their experiences with it, it does seem like it's probably going to finish up more clean than anything else. It does, however, say that it flocculates better than US05 or the classic Chico strain, so that's good. I love a highly flocculent yeast. Okay, so if you're still with me, you must really like beer recipes, because this has got to be a boring video at this point. I'm going to go into the extra boring part now, the water. I use an RO filter to collect my water from my taps, so you can actually use my water additions exactly as listed if you also use RO or distilled water from the grocery store. I've got the chloride at 50 parts per million and the sulfate at 275. This is a 5.5 sulfate to chloride ratio. I don't usually push this ratio that far. I don't think I ever have before. But I want this beer to drink like a West Coast IPA. I want you to take a sip and know it. Since I'm only going for 65 IBUs, a nice heavy sulfate to chloride ratio will really help push that bitterness in a dry, crisp finish like you expect from this beer. There's so many good videos out there for details on water profiles. If you want to dig into it, I highly recommend checking out the Apartment Homebrewers, or yeah, the Apartment Homebrewer. He's got an old video and a new video. I personally like them both, even though he says he hates the original. He's very very good at breaking down the water chemistry stuff. And just to wrap it all up, what else am I adding in here? I've got 5.5 milliliters of lactic acid at the beginning of the mash for my pH. I'm going for a pH of 5.25 or so. Ascorbic acid, I add a little bit of this at the end of the boil in hopes to stave off any oxidation. I will also add more at dry hop and at bottling. Roll flock. I have powder instead of tablets, so I'm using 1 gram. I do want this to finish out as a clear beer, and that's one of the first things that I'm going to do to help make that happen. Yeast nutrients. I'm using a White Labs yeast pill, as well as 5 grams of Fermax. This is going to be a really big beer. I'm going to make a really big starter, but I just want to make sure that the yeast has everything it needs to go ahead and finish this out nice and clean. And that's it. Everything else here is for the ion counts. Like I said, if you want to use this water profile, you can use exactly the additions I have here. I think I've really talked this guy to death. I don't think there's anything else to say.